everyone, welcome to a cooped up episode of ARG Presents. I'm Amigo Aaron, joined by a man who, unlike this week's game, is not the chat's choice, the Brent.
Oh, wait a minute. That's it. Vote right now, chat. Am I your choice?
Don't bother voting.
Oh.
We know who the man is. So, if you tuned in last week, we spun the wheel and we made a deal with the people in the chat room.
Yes.
Who determined what crazy out of this world game machine or computer we were going to look at this week. And the votes came in hot and heavy, hundreds, thousands. They blew up the machines.
Almost dozens.
With their love and support of something called the SAM COUPE,
yes.
or alternatively known as
the SAM COUPE.
The COUPE machine. Brent, what do you know about the SAM COUPE?
You mean previously? I did not know it. I would have said, I've never heard of that car.
Who's Sam? Sam, you left your car.
Yeah, that's it.
So, needless to say, we had to delve deep in the mud to get some info on the SAM COUPE. Even people in the UK are not fully enlightened to this machine.
Yes.
So I have cobbled together a few notes here that we can discuss on the SAM COUPE. A very short-lived but interesting, wacky-looking machine.
Yes.
So the COUPE came out in December of 1989. Now, it was announced to be out in November, but they were running late.
Oh.
And from what I've read, in December, they shipped literally a couple hundred units.
Oh, God.
That's all they could get ready at that point. So, this thing was originally priced at 169 pounds sterling.
In what year?
In 1989. Now, in American money back then, that was $274 US.
Man, that's a good deal.
In today's money, you're looking at 550 buckaree dues, US
Holy
bucks.
moly.
Yeah.
I had no idea this was that cheap.
Oh, yeah. So, how to explain what this looks like? Picture a rectangular box.
All right.
Stick a computer keyboard in the top of it, embedded.
Okay.
And then maybe have a couple slots in the front of the box to stick a floppy drive.
That's all you need, man.
Sprinkle with ports, all sorts of crazy ports, and you've got the COUPE, a bizarre-looking unit, but it looks pretty good. Like, I'm watching a guy type on it. Now, I've got a keyboard here for you in video land, and you can see if you put a box around the bottom, it's not a picture, but you'll kind of go like this, and then there's the drives are down here. It's not bad. The keyboard looks elevated, you know. I liked it. I thought it looked.
Yeah.
It is not aerodynamic or sleek.
No.
That's for sure.
But if you ever needed to beat a guy, you probably could.
That's right. So this thing had a full stroke 72 key keyboard. Not bad. None of this cut rate stuff. No membrane keyboard. None of that chiclet stuff.
Yeah, and for a budget computer,
yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
It had a reset button on the back. This thing has a Zlog Z80B processor. So this thing ran at 6 megahertz. Now, this is an odd. I read this, and I'm going to read it verbatim as to what I've found.
All right.
6 megahertz with the screen off, 4.5 megahertz with the screen on. Kind of weird. I don't know what that means, but
no. Okay. I mean, if you're just doing,
get up and leave.
If you're crunching the numbers, you can just turn the screen off.
That's weird.
Oh, okay.
And this thing can be slowed down to emulate the ZX Spectrum, which we'll get into in a moment.
Oh, nice.
This thing had 256K on board. Some models had more, some up to 512K. And you could actually, with some crazy add-ons, you could get up to 4 big meg of memory. That's right, man. Now, these add-ons they make add-ons that extend to this day, which we'll get into that in a little bit. So, in graphics mode, this thing can go 256 by 192 or 512 by 192.
That's
pretty good.
That's amazing.
128 colors, right? This thing has a Philips SAA 1099 sound chip, 6-channel stereo FM synthesis. Not bad. It weighed 2.26 kilograms. Now get this port list out. This thing was ported up to yin yang. This is the big deal with this thing, is the ports. You got RF output. You got RGB SCART video output. Serial slash network socket. Joystick, Atari style joystick connector. Go with the best, Atari style. Parallel interface. Audio input. Audio output. And it could have one, two, or no internal floppy drives. 3.5-inch floppy drives.
It could have 2 internal floppy drives.
It had space for 2. Now, so picture this. You've got your box right here. Here's one side. Here's the other. You could pull this thing out and put a floppy in there, and there's thing, and the floppies.
So it's modular.
The floppies plug and play, yo. You just plug them right in. Yeah,
wow.
Nice. It's very impressive. This thing was also shipped with the SAM Basic. That's all you need to know. Has SAM DOS. Everything's SAM. Sam's a good guy. So now I'm not done on these ports. Okay. So you've also got a 64-pin Euro connector for general purpose hardware expansion. This is how it's written up. You've got a proprietary mouse socket, although apparently you could, with the converter, you could use an ST mouse on it if you took the note, Atari ST. Now get this. Here's a wacky one. This thing's got a 5-pin DIN connector for light pins or light guns. This is how often do you see a dedicated port for that? MIDI in and out as well. So, and the joystick port, I should add, you could run a splitter like you used to on the Atari, and you could have 2 on 1. So pretty good. Stereo sound. I'm sure I mentioned that, so that's kind of neat. So when this thing shipped, originally the first batch of these had no floppy drives in it. You use the old tape drive like we had on the Coco.
Okay.
Now. Okay.
Man, that's pretty late in the day for tape drives.
It is. And that was that was not off to a good foot. Now, the thing is, this thing could use floppy drives. There was no problem.
Yeah.
But it didn't have them. Now, get this. The Sam's RF modulator was built into the power supply and connected with a weird, like a cable. It's kind of, you're going down the road of like the old Atari 5200. Did something wacky like this. Not everything was beautiful and perfect. This thing was known to have a few slight flaws. One of which is when you had 2 joysticks hooked up at the same time. If one guy was playing and the other guy picked up the joystick and screwed around, it would screw up the first guy's game. Basically, it would basically, he could sort of, both people could affect play. Not whoops. So. Let's just say it can happen.
Why have a splitter then? All right, keep going.
You can hook up the 4 devices into the Euro connector, and they use the SAM bus because it's a SAM thing. And you can have a built-in clock. You also could actually hook up additional power to your external units. God only knows what kind of crazy units they had on this thing. So when this thing was built, when it came out. Here's the way they worked it, best of my knowledge, and you can see what you think about this. So, the ZX Spectrum, or ZX, over in the UK is a big deal. Big deal, all right? But this thing had been out for a good while, all right? It's getting long to tooth. So, 89 rolls around, right? These guys come up with this machine that sort of bridges the gap between the Spectrum and like the Amiga, okay, or the ST. It's something that falls into effectively a super high-end 8-bit system, basically.
There's a problem with that.
Uh-huh.
In '89, wasn't the Amiga already out?
It had been out for a while, but it's expensive. All right, now ponder this for a minute. Plus, there's one thing this did that no Amiga would ever do, and that is this thing was made to be able to play your your ZX Spectrum video games and applications. It was and it would play them better than the Spectrum. And that's the gimmick. So what this thing could do, anything that was made, this is the best of my understanding, and some egghead can hop in at any moment. But best of my understanding, this thing could emulate a 48K Spectrum. All right, and what it did it would literally take the ZX Spectrum BIOS or whatever, and it would copy it onto its own memory and boot off of it. It would come to a little menu. You would load up your Spectrum game, and the compatibility in the 48K range was real good, real good. And one thing it also would do would get rid of that annoying color clash that would happen. It would actually, the games would also run faster, right? It would run 25% faster, something like that. A significant change. And it wouldn't enhance the games in any other way, but I mean, just to get rid of the color clash is a pretty big deal. And then having that extra boost of speed gave those some of those slower ZX Spectrum games a little bounce and a little pop to them.
That's very interesting. And if that's what they were going for, I don't think they really looked at the big picture, because you could pick up a Spectrum for like half the cost.
Well, I mean, it wasn't, but this is a better Spectrum, you know what I'm saying?
Would you go, if someone said, hey, Aaron, like, we just released a thing that you can go back and play all of your Sega Genesis games on.
Yeah. Like,
today. It's like, and if you do it, it'll be like the loading will be like 15% faster. And like, the graphics will be 2% sharper. Would you be like, all right?
Yeah, but this that you're talking about something about 30 years ago, but that's what you're going with. Listen, you're beating the drum here that's already been beat, because this thing failed. That's my point. So just to back up a little bit, when this thing came out, it was put out by an outfit called Miles Gordon Technology, MGT. All right.
Okay.
It was created by these two fellows, Alan Miles and Bruce Gordon. All right. They had already worked. They worked for Sinclair and had already been making peripherals for the ZX Spectrum, and they were pretty popular. There was one that was.
So they knew the ins and outs.
Oh yeah, and they sold this thing called the Disciple, which is a real popular peripheral for the ZX. So these guys weren't just a couple of dips. It's like me and you decided to have a computer. These guys knew what they were doing, and so. Like I said, they had worked this in. Basically, they thought to themselves, okay, we can do this as a machine that can play your old stuff. Plus, it'll play stuff made for it, right? It's sort of like the Coco 3. How about that? It was compatible with the Coco 2 stuff.
Right.
So one of the things they bragged about was the ability to port stuff over and enhance it real quick. So if they were for example, if you were making a ZX Spectrum game, heck, it's no problem just to port over to SAM, but you could add a bunch of extra sound or extra colors or whatever.
That's okay.
And that was sort of.
I understand their gimmick.
Right.
Yeah.
So the problem to begin with was they were, in my opinion, I think this is a general consensus, is when they started this endeavor of making these machines, they were in over their head. Again, they had planned on releasing these in November of '89, and they couldn't get production going well, and so it pushed them back into December. And when you ship 200 units and at the Christmas month of your announced machine,
that's not enough.
You're boned. That's
not nearly enough.
Yeah, that's not even close. And so they were off to a bad start. And they instantly had money troubles, and also something that you were just sitting here talking about it, but it's true. It was a hard sell to put out a computer with no floppy drive, and it was an 8-bit machine in a time where you've got Amigas and Atari STs and even PCs that are starting to. 89 things were happening.
It was a boom. If this thing would have released in '87, it would have blown off the shelves.
Yeah, right. And so there was also, when they shipped this thing, there was a bug in the machine, in the ROM, that caused some problems with the disk drive. So they ended up having they had to go and get new ROMs for all these things, and that cost them. So you
can't do that as a computer.
Yeah, so they were cooking along into '90. Well, they weren't cooking along; they were staggering along like a, you know what I'm saying? And bam, in '90 they everything stopped and they went into liquidation. All right, so this reminds me of the end of the Amiga. This is when if you're a SAM, and you're really screwed if you got one of these, the Coupe, and you're like, man, I hope this thing keeps on trucking. Well, because I mean you had to know there weren't very many of you. So eventually, these guys somehow kind of rallied. They started a new company called SAM Computers Limited, and they bought back the rights to their machine after it had been liquidated, and they started making these things again in 90. And then
That sounds like the worst idea ever.
Well, I know. Something else they had trouble with was getting titles made, and I'll get to that in a minute. But a lot of the titles for this were done by a lot of the big titles were done by one guy. Basically,
Yeah.
it was like the SAM COUPE, a master. So everything, they were swimming along until September of '92, when they announced that they'd gone into voluntary liquidation again. All right, so all the SAM people were upset. Who could blame them? So there was word on the street that another outfit was going to buy SAM and keep it going. And sure enough, an outfit called West Coast Computers strolled into town. They bought the SAM after a couple months, and in April of '93, they finally made it public that they'd bought the SAM. And then they were talking about all the stuff they were going to do with it, and then the SAM COUPE died. I mean, literally. Everybody was happy. It's a lot like when Gateway bought Amigos. Everybody's like, "Oh, all right, we're in," and it just a complete flop.
Well,
And they were done.
And that would, the SAM COUPE was a tough sell in '89. In '92, you got to be kidding me.
'93.
Oh,
Yeah.
get out! What do you?
They had an awesome ad. I wrote this down because I thought it was. You've been building up your Spectrum software collection for years, ran the ad. You want a computer with better sound, better graphics, more power, but you don't want to lose your software. The COUPE is the computer for you. Which that sums it up nicely, I think. I watched the dude load some Spectrum stuff on here. It was quite interesting, actually, because when he first started, he couldn't get anything to load. He was trying to use a tape drive, and it turns out that you need a stereo input for this thing for the tape drive to work. Interesting. But once he did that, it worked, and it worked well. It worked real well. I mean,
That is odd.
it loaded up everything he tried. Everything about this computer is odd, dude. I mean, it's an odd, wacky system, man. It is what it is. So let's talk about the games on this thing. They did not get a lot of support from. Well, let's just stop there. They did not get a lot of support, and there weren't a ton of what I would call quality games that were released for it, but there were some. So I'd say there were basically 4 big games that I found that people think are really good. I think there's 4. There's Prince of Persia. There's a port of that. There's a port of Lemmings. That's also good.
Yes.
What was the other port? Oh, Manic Miner got a port. And I will say I looked at Lemmings and I looked at Prince of Persia. And they're pretty good. I mean, given the system, they're nice and colorful.
Absolutely.
They play okay. Prince of Persia is pretty solid. The sound isn't as good as you would expect on say the Amiga or something, but I mean it's still pretty good. I watched some playthroughs of Manic Miner. Wow, the sound on that's really good, and the game looked great. Having played that one on the Spectrum, I mean I thought it was a pretty big improvement.
Sure.
To be honest with you, but the long and short of it is they just didn't get much action, and I think one guy did most of the big ports. Then you've got a lot of like lower level games, which is sort of like what we did. There was a magazine based, believe it or not, I don't know how this happened. There was a thing called Fred Publishing that was a SAM supporter, and they were the ones that did Lemmings and Oh No More Lemmings. They also did a bunch of other games. Bowin, and none of the stuff I've never heard of any of this stuff. Football League Manager, Parallax, some other stuff. And Phoenix Software are the ones that did Manic Miner. So they had a couple A titles, but for the most part, there was a ton of what I would call homemade stuff.
C through F.
Or I mean, This is a weird system in terms of the library,
This
and we're coming in like idiots, so we have no idea what we're
Right.
looking for. And so when we pick these games out, I mean, I don't know how you picked yours, but I once again with my tried and true, look for the game with the coolest or wackiest name and pick that one. So that's what I did. On the opening screen, looked good. So
I looked for what I went to a site that had a bunch of it that had number of downloads.
yeah,
So I went to the list and sorted by least downloaded,
yeah,
and then kept scrolling up until I got to something that I didn't think was a demo or a magazine release. Because this thing had a ton of magazine pack-in discs made for it.
Oh yeah, I noticed that.
I didn't scroll far enough, by the way,
Yeah.
because I didn't actually pick a commercial game.
There was a fellow called Quasar, and he's a guy who is still supporting the SAM with a bunch of nutty hardware peripherals, including like card readers and all sorts of stuff. And he's kind of a big deal in the SAM COUPE community, like the #1 guy. Believe it or not, a fellow named Sanction in our Discord channel actually owns one of these things.
That's amazing.
And sent us some of the pictures you'll see, and it had some real nice shots of the thing even taking apart and stuff. The board in this thing is actually a pretty compact little board. Yeah. It reminds me of these. When I worked at IBM, we made these little tiny no account crap laptops. They had a very similar style board, kind of in that T. But these look pretty solid. I like the idea of using the Atari sticks, and I mean they had a lot of good ideas. Having all the expandability, the ports. I mean, it's a good way to go. Is it? I think we can agree that this thing came out the wrong time and put out poorly. Yeah. I mean, if you ship this in '87,
yeah,
you got something.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Even '88, but in '89. Things are changing, and if they brought these out in big numbers in '89, you might have had something. But when you limp along, I should mention, do you want to guess at the total number of these shipped? This is going to be one of the lowest run things we've ever.
It's got to. I'll say 15,000.
You're very close. 12,000.
Yeah,
12,000 of these that are known to have been produced.
This has a huge scene for that few. Product made.
Yeah. I will say that we, of course, me and you had, and I also thank Pixels for providing me and you links to our games and the emulator, Pixels of Dawn, who helped us out. He always does, and Sanction, of course, who gave us lots of good information. The emulator was painless. We talked about this before the show started. We fired it right up. We got our game going, and the game's fired right up.
Yeah.
No problem. The opening screen on this is pretty. The opening screen of the SAM COUPE coming up. It's colorful, a bunch of crazy bars and stuff on there. I mean, it reminded me, and we'll probably get into this more later. It very similar to the Coco in a lot of ways. The games looked very Coco. The sound was Coco-y. I know that may be blasphemy to all the SAM COUPE owners.
It ran a lot better.
It was absolutely snappier. There's no doubt. But I mean, I don't think the Coco could have done Lemmings or one of those real high end games.
I don't either.
I think some of the games I looked at just were people that didn't know a ton about programming for the thing. Because some of them ran better than others. The ones I looked at, the low end stuff, but the high end stuff. Listen, this was C64 plus level stuff. I mean, it was stuff that you would.
I agree.
It sat in a very odd spot,
and
it makes one wonder that if this system had gained any traction, what could have been produced for it? Because I mean, Lemmings, no more Lemmings. Like I said, they're not Amiga perfect, but they're better than you would find on a lot of systems, and certainly on most of your 8-bit systems.
Sure. This system, it's very interesting, especially hearing a little more of its past. I often wonder why consoles, or computers more so, don't go for that last big hurrah and make like the ultra system for the what's going out, kind of being the specialized to bridge that gap, like you said before. And now I'm starting to realize why, because as we're sitting here talking about it, the appeal of this is can only be appealing to people who owned a Spectrum and were looking to move from that.
Yeah.
Outside of that realm, who's going to be like, wow, now I can play all those Spectrum games I didn't play before?
Well, I think the promise of, hey, Spectrum was such a big deal in the UK that you could run a company just on that basis, I think, if you were successful.
I'm going to have proof that you can.
Well, no, because these guys didn't successfully launch it is the thing. I mean, you've got something that you, plus the not putting the disk drive in there. I mean, at that point, you're
that was.
And the funny thing is, I watched the fellow that used the thing to emulate the Spectrum, and what you're supposed to do is once you've got the Spectrum game loaded, you can actually save it on the floppy. Which is good. That's nice.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if this thing was highly coveted. I mean, I think part of the problem was probably you couldn't get these too.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know now from looking at the eBay prices, and I'll just touch on that real quick. These things sell for a fortune on eBay. You can forget about getting one for under say $600 US. I mean, they're highly prized.
Yeah,
you can imagine, because I thought much like every week when we do this show, I'm like, hey. Maybe I'll just hop on eBay and pick one of these old junkers up wrong. I'm wrong every week. These old junkers are worth a fortune. You ain't buying them. And so the fact that we had a fella that actually owned one was quite a boon.
Was pretty amazing, yeah. Now, do you know what SAM stood for?
It's the SAM COUPE. I remember reading this. I've heard there's a bunch of theories, right?
No one really knows what it was.
Right.
What SAM stood for, if it stood for anything. But the rumored is Spectrum Advanced Machine.
All right, that makes
which
sense.
Someone later said that no, that's not what it stood for. It stood for Some Amazing Machine.
That's worse.
And I was
that's
like,
worse.
And then somebody came back later and said, no, that's not right. It stood for Some Amazing Micro.
Okay.
And that's the worst of the bunch.
And what about the coupe part?
No, coupes are fun.
Just put that in because it's like a car. There aren't little dots behind the name, so maybe it's just Sam. I like to think that's the name of the.
Yeah, just hey Sam.
I'm sitting around making up a computer name. I was like, okay, I'm going to take a friendly sounding name and then put something to do with a car behind it. That's your computer.
The Mary Ford.
That's right, or the Billy Vet. Something like that.
All right, yeah.
That works. We can do this all day.
We probably shouldn't, though.
So, something about this computer was endearing. I will say, I don't know if it's the name, everything being Sam DOS, Sam Basic, all Sam stuff. And it's such a nutty looking unit that I kind of want one. You know what I mean? I think it'd be fun to have one. So,
I've just been informed that. The coupe part, it could be one of two things. The car.
Yeah.
Or there's an ice cream sundae called the Ice Cream Coupe.
Okay.
And it could be named after that. Because
neither one of those make any more sense than the other. So
the coupe is a fast car. So it's a fast machine.
I suppose. That's weird, man. So as I mentioned earlier, we stupidly staggered blindly into this thing to pick a couple games from the minuscule library. Now, did we pick Lemmings? Did we pick Prince of Persia? No.
No, anyone can look up that stuff.
We picked a couple games that are obscure, one of which wasn't even sold.
Well, I'm going to get into that.
So we're going to step right in gingerly as Brent introduces his game for the week. Now, Brent, tell the people the game you selected here for the show.
I chose Blast Turbo.
Blast Turbo.
Yes.
Much like the Sam Coupe name, this is another game that has a car thing referenced at the back of it.
Well, Turbo was because it was faster than the original Blast.
It was fast. There's no doubt about that.
Before we get into Blast Turbo, I want to go a little bit into James R. Curry, which is the developer of Blast Turbo.
Okay.
He is still making games today. He makes iPhone games and that sort of thing. He's a one-man show, although he did have help with the art on this, and I'll get that later on. He is also one of the few, there's believed to be 40 of these to exist, and he is a known owner of at least one of them. when the SAM COUPE released, they had 20 golden chips made. A gold ASIC chips.
ASIC.
Yeah. There are 40 prototypes, and 20 of them were mounted on plaques as kind of a thing.
Uh-huh.
And this was signed by Bruce Gordon.
Okay.
So they made these plaques, and they said, you know what? We are only going to sell these plaques to the absolute most dedicated people out there for the SAM COUPE that really helped drive us.
So they sold them?
They
sold these awards, these highly touted awards,
for £80. So, and they said, don't just put the check in the mail. Don't just put the check in the mail, because we're not going to just sell them to any goof off the street.
Okay.
Highly dedicated people. Now, among this list, James R. Curry is one that he got a chip. There were many that later showed up on eBay, but way down the line, and now they are highly sought after in the SAM COUPE community, because you can drop these chips into your system and run your system off of them. They're fully functioning chips with gold leads. So
no one would do that, right?
Yes, Chris White is known to run his SAM COUPE on his golden processor chip.
You've got a golden ASIC.
That's right. Nev Young also runs.
Who are these people?
These are people, developers mostly in the community.
Now I've got a question before you continue. These are people. These were only sold. So I walked up old A. I rolled into the SAM COUPE office and said, I'm ready to buy an $80 gold ASIC.
That's right.
They wouldn't sell me one because I was not decorated in the community.
That's correct.
The community was around for like a year, less than a year. How do you get decorated?
Well, it is rumored now that the prices for these chips are about $50,000.
Jeez.
So if you got one of these, it's a whole different world now.
What a bizarre story. That is. And how many did they make?
40 total. 40 total. And 20 of them were mounted on plaques, and 20 were sold as just chips.
That is.
And even
are they any better than a normal ASIC?
It is said that yes, they run faster. However, the side-by-side comparisons leave people to question if that was true or not.
That is the goofiest story I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Well done.
So, James R. Curry owning one of these lets you know that he has been in the scene for a while, and he was a big SAM COUPE guy.
And so he's the guy that made your game.
Yes.
That's incredible. Is that why you picked that game? Or?
Absolutely not. These are facts I found out.
That's a remarkable tale.
So, James R. Curry is someone who's been in the biz for a while. He's a younger guy. I mean, by our standards, I guess. Well, he's actually about our age.
Yeah.
And he still makes games today on the iOS platform.
Yeah.
So if you want to, he just released a new game about food, something about the world. Some guy was trying to solve the world hunger problem, and he made a bunch of stuff, but it ended up that the food came to life and was trying to kill him. I just read a small blurb about it, and I get to check it out.
That's topical. It's today's headline.
Yeah. So if you ever want to check out a game by James, it's out there. That was released only a couple years ago.
You should be this guy's press agent.
I've
never wanted to meet a man more than I want to meet this guy.
So when he made Blast Turbo, it was actually an update to Blast, which he said appears on the Fred 56, which I have no idea what that is.
Fred 56, maybe that's a magazine.
He said that
Disc.
when he made Blast, he said, I wanted to make an update for the SAM, because the SAM had the more power, could do a little more stuff.
So this was originally out in the ZX, right? The first one?
I believe so, okay. Yeah. And something we want to mention, this was never a commercially released game.
Right.
This was
clearly.
This was basically shareware or demo software, and we've never really talked about that on this channel because we typically stick to more commercially released games to better highlight the system.
Have we ever covered a public domain game?
This is it. This is the first one.
How crazy, eh?
But it's something to note. The demo scene, the shareware scene, where it doesn't have these big publishers or companies behind it, really drove a lot of software back in the day.
Especially for the SAM. Drove all the software.
So, I'm kind of glad that it was a goof when I picked the game because I thought it was commercially released. But I'm kind of glad that it came out this way because it really highlights what these people behind the scenes, they love their computer. They loved tinkering. They wanted to make software. It wasn't necessarily that they were trying to make the quick buck or anything. They were just out there programming for the love of programming. And you get some decent stuff that way. Now, not all of it's good. Not all of it's, going to rock the world. But occasionally you get stuff out there that's so good that it's worth taking a look at. And I think that Blast Turbo, in my opinion, is good enough to take a look at for that reason. He said that things he fixed from the older game was substantial increase in speed. It's twice as fast as the original Blast. Also, different title screen. Fixed some bugs. Added a pause to the game. And basically polished it up. He felt that this was a more complete game than what he had before. So the keys on this are the oddest key mappings I've ever seen as a default keyboard layout.
Thank God when it comes up, it's got instructions. Because otherwise, that'd be
I would have
completely
never
bugged.
found these.
Yeah.
This game, for you at home that can picture a keyboard in your mind, left and right is O and P, which, okay, that sort of works. Up and down is Q and Z.
Yeah, I used a joystick on this one, by the way.
Oh, I played keyboard. And the fire button is S.
Yeah.
So when I first thought that down was an important part of the game, my hand was cramping so bad trying to use these keys. I guess in the SAM COUPE, since it's kind of in a box, you maybe can kind of hold your hand and rest it there.
Or maybe the keyboard's a little more oddly shaped.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was a crazy layout. But eventually I realized down is not an important aspect of the game.
Yeah, because you just fall.
Yeah, so when you stop trying to hold onto the down key, it's actually pretty comfortable.
When would you use down, now I think about it?
Never. To start the game.
Yeah.
Just to move the arrow to the start key. The plot of this game is tremendous.
It has a plot?
Yes, that's right. As a robot trapped on a strange alien world, you've got to escape every level and return to your ship and freedom. The loosest plot. And James knows that, the plot's crap. I mean, he makes fun of it as he's going. As you play the game in Blast Turbo, you are a little robot that can move left and right and jump. Up with jump. And you lay landmines. And the object of the game is to lay a landmine and have the bad guys run into it. Or, since you aren't hurt by your own mines, you can lay a landmine and run into it and it'll explode and you'll get the enemy in the explosion. Another thing you can do with this is chain mines together. So you can have a line of mines, set off one on the left to blow up the chain, and you'll have a big stream of them, kind of a la Bomberman. Each screen is a single screen that you can loop from the top to the bottom, to the left to the right. It's made up of platforms, and the enemies are basically rolling or bouncing or flying around, depending on what kind of enemy.
Unicycles or bikes or
yes,
something.
We're going to go over the enemies here in a second. And the object is to clear off all the enemies to go to the next screen. It's the level designs are very bubble bobble. The bomb aspect is very Bomberman. And the enemies are just out of this world. The enemies in this game are kind of ridiculous. So you've got unicycles, because, on the alien planet, of course, you've got living unicycles. You've also got helicopters that will fly around. The unicycles just go on the platforms and move left and right. You've got chainsaws, of course, helmets, generators, which look like large Aztec heads that spit bad guys out of it. And then, of course, you've got Ghost, because that's what happens when you're on an alien planet, Ghost.
We both got ghosts this week.
That's right. It is a fast-paced, chaotic game. While the bad guys will literally just follow what seems to be a random pattern, because they go from the bottom of the screen. All the bottoms of the screen have some kind of hole. Well, actually, that's not true, but for the most part, have a bottom hole that loops to the top of the screen. So the enemies are always just going down and up and left and right if they're the helicopters, and seemingly random patterns. And any time that they run into anything, they bounce at what was basically the correct angle. When you destroy an enemy, they become a little power-up ball that bounces around the screen, and enemies can still run into that power ball and they don't get hurt, they just get diverted. So it changes their pathing. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but holy moly does it make everything very unpredictable. So it's not just like you can follow the pattern of what's bouncing around the screen and then lay your mind and everything's happy. The game is crazy fast and it's crazy chaotic. Another thing is your mines are not infinite. They're limited to 5 when you start the game, and sometimes when you kill an enemy, you can pick up 3 more. Biggest hint on this game, guys, if you plan on playing it, you don't get your mines reset to 5 when you die. So you can lay down 4 mines, die, and then when you respawn, you will have 1 mine.
You're boned.
The only time that your mines reset to 5 is when you end the level with 0 mines or you die with 0 mines. So if you beat a level and you have 1 or 2 mines left, waste them because you'll get reset to 5. Once I figured that out, I had a much better time with the game because I found myself constantly running out of mines because there are more enemies than there are mines in your inventory. And if you can build up a stockpile, you don't lose them when you die. So that is something you certainly want to do. Another strategy on the game is you kind of have to chain mines together on some scenes to where you can kind of hide in safety from the bouncing and the craziness, and you can chain 2 or 3 mines together and then blow it out the side when an enemy gets close. Lastly, starting on I believe it's level 5, and there's only 10 levels of the game, so it's a short game. But starting on level 5, you start seeing the Aztec heads that are generators. You have to that is your number one priority, and they're always in kind of tricky platform situations where you have to jump. But it's random how many bad guys they spit out, but sometimes they will just send an endless chain of enemies after you. So you have to stop it before it does that. I really like this game. It's odd, it's quirky, it's fast-paced.
Did you beat it?
I did not beat it. I got to stage 8.
I couldn't even get to stage 5, so I will say.
Oh.
Yeah.
But I played it, and I got better as I played it. Because while the enemy movement is random after it starts hitting stuff, the starting set of where the enemies are static. So all the enemies always start in the same place when you get to a stage. And I started to see where I could lay mines so that the first movements of the enemies ran into mines and would get quick kills. Almost imperative. As I did that, I kept getting better and better and better. You only get 5 lives in the game, and once your lives are over, you have to start over. There's no continues. There is score in the game, so that's something you can kind of go for. I personally was just trying to get to the end. I really enjoyed this game because I felt like I got better as I played it. And I always love that about a game. So you didn't like this.
I hated it. To be honest with you, I thought it was just it was too fast. I mean, it was like a malfunctioning fast. I had to go watch video to make sure that my emulator wasn't running wrong. It's just I didn't think the guy controlled well. I would whenever you explode an enemy, if you get too close to the explosion, that kills you.
No, the explosions don't hurt you.
No, the enemy's death kills you.
Well, no, what it is the enemy does not die by the very top of the explosion. And since your guy is the same size as the explosion, height-wise, if an enemy comes down and you're hiding in an explosion, he still kills you. That is kind of cheap.
Yeah.
But I understand why it is.
If it wasn't for the documentation, ironically, your public domain game had documentation that could read. I'll give it that. I did like that. Where on mine, I've got nothing. I don't have any backstory.
Well, we'll get to yours.
I don't have anything because I couldn't find jack squat. But the truth of the matter is, I just didn't think that the game was fun. I mean, to be blunt.
Wow.
I played till I think I got to like 3rd or 4th level, and it's chaotic. It's not in a good way.
No, I think it's a perfect way.
It's not attractive, to be honest with you.
It's not the most beautiful game. It's bubble quality graphics, but dirtier.
It's not that. It's not even to say ballpark. It's bubble bob. Are you kidding me?
No, I think it is. I think it's got the same style.
This is
of
just
graphics.
bobble. It was a Sam bobble. I didn't like the control that much, to be honest with you.
The jumps are floaty.
I tried, and we'll get into that with my game too, but I tried the joystick and the keyboard. You said the keyboard commands are bizarre.
Yeah, they are. They're odd until you get used to them.
But this. I'll get into this more with my game, but I tried this game as soon as you announced it. I played it for a little while, not too long, because I was just like, there's not much to this. Then I came back to it, and then I came back to it again, and I kept coming back to it, because normally when that happens to me, if I come back a couple times, I'll find something to hang my hat on, but I just didn't think there was much to it. I mean, it just looked like a low-end, it did look like a low-end public domain game that some guy put together, and it didn't do it for me. Certainly not something that would be befitting of a man with a gold ASIC.
Now, see, I really disagree with you. I'm not trying to say this is some shining beacon, run out and buy a SAM COUPE to play this. No, it's not like that. But as a game that you can set down, when I played it, I thought, man, because I watched the videos first. And I thought, man, I'm going to burn through this game. I'm going to beat the 10 stages in a few minutes. Because it looked so passe. It just looked like you lay your bombs down, the enemies blow up, you win. And then when I played it, I was like, at the very beginning, I was so ticked off because I suck so bad at it. And I kept playing it more and more and more. And when I finally beat level 7, I was like, oh, yes. And I died on level 8 and lost all my life, and I never got back there. And I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and I tried. When I stopped playing, I had played for over 2 hours. Over 2 hours.
You got more from it than I did. There's no doubt. You actually...
I enjoyed the challenge.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the speed, the chaos of it, trying to predict where the enemies are going to go. The controls are simple. You lay the mine down in front of you whenever you hit the button. Jumping is right out because it's so floaty. It makes the platforming parts really difficult.
It's hard to get up. That's something else. I had trouble like even on the first stage, there's an area where you could just kind of jump up, and the platforms get smaller. They're almost like steps. Just because your guy jumps straight up, so you sort of have to use. Well, you sort of have to make him go so he jumps up to a next platform. It's hard. I had all kinds of trouble jumping.
You either have straight up, which does have its uses in this game, because you can jump straight up and you can mine at any point. So you can jump straight up, lay a mine on a platform above you, and fall back down. To jump left or right, You have to, press both the keys at the same time, of course.
It's
but
hard.
you float, and if you hit a platform, you'll float up the platform and pop on top of it.
The controls I thought were excruciating.
I thought they were.
And having the guys bounce around like that, you're trying to mine them, and then even once you mine them, you can get you could harvest a little goodie that they drop or they become. That's a hassle too. Just getting because they're bebopping around. It's a hassle. You say there's some kind of geometry to the way they bounce. To me, it just seemed like they randomly bounced around.
It's because they bounce off of so much stuff. My 100% biggest complaint about the game is when you die, because when you die, the whole board resets. When you die, you should go back to 5 mines if you have less than 5 mines. If you have more, I think you should keep them.
Yeah,
that's definitely a strategy of the game.
Yeah.
But losing the mines when you have less than 5, or not getting them back, that was a travesty.
Yeah, because when you're down, you're down.
Yes. Yeah. The game kicks you when you're already down.
Yeah. I didn't find the game easy at all. I thought it was
I thought it was very difficult. Yeah. But it was a challenge that you grow into. I really enjoyed this. Now, like I said, this isn't going to replace X-Men vs. Street Fighter is my favorite game of all time. But it is a game that I think is worthy of checking out, especially if you already have the emulator out and going. Now, if you don't want a challenging game, skip it, because it is a challenging game.
Well, if you've got a SAM COUPE and you want a game, I would try every game, because you might as well run through the couple dozen you got and then move along. But I didn't enjoy this game at all.
Something I just want to touch on, just because James R. Curry felt it was important enough to say in his credits, all the graphics in this game were done by Michael E. Bowin. Except for the ending ship, which I unfortunately was not able to see. The ending logo was done by Graham N. Goring, and it was because Mike was sick that day, so they just had to get a replacement. But I'll have to say, for a public domain game, I was incredibly entertained by this. I put way more hours into it than I thought I was going to. I put way more time into it than your game. Speaking of your game, let's get right into it.
Well, listen, you took a good while in that simple little game. That's a good thing, because we'll zip through this look at a breakneck pace. So let's talk about the game I chose. Now, as you know, I like to choose my games for the stupidest reasons. And so when I saw Count Dracula was involved, I was in. So my game is Bowin or Bowin. How would you pronounce that?
I would say it was Bowin.
Let's go with Bowin. Bowin and the Count Dracula. So
the Count Dracula.
Listen, there's only one, dude. So this was released in '91, and it was made by a fella named David Seraphim, and the artist on it was Yoo Silva. Okay. I like that name, by the way. Published by Persona, which apparently did a lot of publishing back in the day. And this is a platform game. So, I can find no docs on this. I could find no eBay on this. I just found very minimal information on this game. I could not find a playthrough of any consequence on it. Just much like myself, they had a cup of coffee with it. So, best I can tell, you are Bowin, and this is a single screen game where you go around collecting diamonds. All right,
sure.
Sounds simple enough. There are platforms aplenty, and you are trying to avoid ghosts and basically like bugs. You have at your disposal what are tomatoes or apples. What would you figure those fruits were?
I thought they were apples.
Once you eat these in a hilarious turn of events, like Pac-Man style, you can then go and you could eat, delete, kill, whatever this guy does to these animals and monsters, and they go away. Pretty simple stuff.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie. I did not get very far in this game. I only got to level 1-4. I believe was as high as I got, or maybe it might be 1-5. I think like 4 or 5 screens in. It was rinse and repeat. The The game is it's not an unattractive game.
It's
the
okay.
opening screen is outstanding. A beautiful screen with Dracula and Bowin, and it's very well done. It's got a lovely tune in the background. Now, here's the problem with the lovely tune. Take a lovely tune. Take any lovely tune, all right? Clip out
the loveliness.
Clip out about 4 seconds of that tune. Now, just play it over and over. That's it. That's the tune.
It was so
the first time you hear it, you're like, ah. And then subsequently, you're like, ah, no. Yeah. It's almost like a sublime torture that runs in the background. And it never stops.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Until you die. And so,
and it, literally, not in game. I feel like I'm going to die.
This game has been described as a mix-up of Bubble Bobble and Bomb Jack. Right?
Your game?
Yeah, that's what it's been described as. But a mix-up of Bubble Bobble. You ever play Bomb Jack?
Yes.
I played both.
Bomb Jack, I'll kind of give it. Bubble Bobble, it has nothing to do with Bubble Bobble.
Well, I'm just telling you. This game came out on tape. I should mention that, as opposed to disc. Oh, I mean, hey, how did yours ship? Who knows, right? The colors in this game were nice. The color palette they used for the platform stages on here remind me very much of the Coco. In fact, in some ways, this reminded me of. It's sort of graphically, the color palette reminded me of the Coco version of Popeye.
Yes.
If you recall that, it had a lot of the blues and those kind of reds and pinks.
I agree.
You know, this, on the other hand, is not nearly that good.
No.
And it's hampered by a few things. The major thing is, the controls are not good.
No.
Again, I played this with, much like your game, I tried this with the joystick and the keyboard to see which one I liked better. And my problem was jumping on this one. Jumping on yours it was tough to jump at an angle. This one, he was too jumpy. It's almost like the keyboard, and you never know, this could be an emulation thing. You never know. But I would double jump all the time, and it was infuriating.
Yes. Yeah.
Also, the hit detection on this is punishing.
Yes.
If you're anywhere near a bad guy, you're done, son. They would take you out. Really, what bothered me about this game, and it kept me coming back, I will say this, is that it didn't seem like it was that difficult a game. Like, I knew what I had to do. This is one of those games that's infuriating because you know what you have to do. You know you can do it. Like, get out there, and what they've done is they've taken it's almost a puzzle platformer in a way, because to get to certain diamonds you have to take a certain path, and you may have to eat a fruit to kill a guy that's guarding the diamond in a certain way. If you fall too far in this, you die. So if you fall more than a couple platforms high, you die. But he can't fall a little bit. But you have to know where you can launch off of. There are lots of pixel-perfect jumps you have to make at certain parts of this to get to different higher platforms to get these diamonds. So I think you've got the bones of a good game here. Like I said, the graphics are pleasing looking. The music, I mean, what of it is there is okay. They could have done a better job on that. And it's you versus Dracula. I never saw Dracula.
No.
I said, I mean, maybe he's in there later on. But another problem is it was hard to play this game in Scout just because no one had played it for any length of time.
This is the least played game with the least amount of footage I have ever seen us play.
It almost makes it sound like that I was an idiot and when I picked it. There are the sound effects in it are pretty normal and nothing to write home about, to be honest with you. And the structure of the levels I thought was actually pretty good, the ones I saw. I could not find any way to cheat on this either, and I looked around to see if there was some way to cheat.
There was nothing about this game.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of nothing. Your guide looks sort of like, I don't know, let's say a Robin Hood combined with a witch, I guess would be the best way to put it. Kind of a green.
And then smashed it
and then smushed a little. Not an attractive. The ghosts look like ghosts. I mean, you got to give them that.
Okay.
I mean, graphics on everything. Now, here's my controversial statement here. I actually like this game way more than Brent's because I thought I had a chance. I thought I had a chance, and it was a game that ran at a playable speed. And I thought they'd put more work into it. It looked better. It sounded better. But the controls were every bit as finicky for me. So, at the end of the day, in my shortest look at a game ever, that's pretty much all I've got to say about it. It's just too difficult with control scheme, and I thought it was okay. I know you weren't a fan. What did you think about it? And feel free to unload because it's like I'm married to it. I mean, it is what it is.
This game is the shortest I've ever played a game for this show. I played it less than 20 minutes.
Oh, wow. And
there are two major reasons for that.
I bet I know one of them.
The absolute first one is the sound. Even when I muted it, I heard it. Yeah. It was so repetitive and grinding. I'm not a huge, even though I like Maniac Manor.
Manic Manor.
Manic Manor.
Maniac Manor, that's a whole different game.
Even though I enjoy that game, and this game, I think this is much closer to that than say Bubble Bobble. Mm-hmm. I hated this game. The controls were so bad. Continuously double jumping. It was like I could not avoid it. Yes.
And what would make it worse is, especially when you had to catch one of those elevators.
Yes.
It was the worst. And the thing is, because the way the game was structured, there's a lot of timing involved. And so it's infuriating, and then you get so mad, you just make a dumb mistake after that. It happened to me over and over. I'm glad it wasn't just me.
But that isn't the music is actually not the worst sin of this game. It's up there, but it is not the worst sin. The worst sin was when I got to level 1-3 and instantly freaking died because there's an enemy that starts on the exact same platform as you and it runs into you.
Yeah.
Bad game design.
Something else I should bring
up. That
up.
is unforgivable.
Yeah, well, that's not the first game.
You can never do that to a player, especially that early into the game, and expect that player to stick around, because there was absolutely no reason for that to happen. It was a cheap death, and it's a way that bad developers use that kind of crap to extend the life of their game, because the next time you'll know you have to jump to the left or jump to the right. No. Bad game design. I hate crap like that. As soon as that happened, I turned the game off and I never went back to it.
To be fair, your game does a very similar
thing.
It
does not.
Yeah, when you start the game, the bad guy can come down, not immediately, but he won't come down and kill you.
This, in none of the levels I saw, and I got to 8, none of the levels I saw had an enemy that started on the same platform, and in less than a second, you were dead.
Well, listen, here's the thing. And I agree. I found that, and to compound that, and what the level Brent's talking about is you start at the top of that level. But the weird thing about this game is, and this happened to me a couple of times as I moved up the levels, I could not quickly determine where my guy was because he's so blends in with the backgrounds and stuff that you can't see where he's at. So eventually, I guess if you play enough, you memorize where you start. But when you're just starting out, it's hard to find that graphic. So, yes, that happened to me. It is infuriating. I'm not going to deny it.
That is someone that either doesn't playtest their games, doesn't give the game to someone else to playtest it, because if you know it's there, you can avoid it. That kind of cheap death crap ticks me off more than any aspect of gaming.
I wouldn't waste too much of your anger on this one.
No, I'm not. This is still not as bad as Microcosm, because while this infuriated me, it did not cause me physical pain to look at the screen. Hope
springs eternal.
Now my ears bled because of this game, but I was so mad when that happened. Because getting to stage 1-3, you'd think wouldn't be that hard. Like I said, it took me about 20 minutes. because the game just has so many other flaws. But when I insta-died at level 3, I was so pissed off. I slammed the X button on the top of the emulator and closed it out, and I never went back.
You've got anger issues.
Oh
you
my god!
You get too mad about things. Am I wrong here?
No. You can't do that as a developer of a game.
Oh yeah, you can. You can if you're developing something in the SAM COUPE. Do what you want.
Oh my god!
Now get this. There was an enhanced version of this which featured the Quasar surround sound released. Can you imagine playing that? Hopefully they enhanced that music to the nines. My last little tidbit, this was originally lined up to be released by Revelation before it ended up being released by Persona, so I don't know what happened there. Now, I found a review of this from a guy. I'm just going to get down, and then I'll read some of our user reviews here. This guy gave it a graphics 7, sound 8. Hey, he loved it. Gameplay 8.5, and overall 8 in dial, if you want to direct your comments at him. Now, as we've done in started doing in the last week or two, we have taken in some reviews from our fine folks in the Discord, and so I'm gonna read some of them now. This was at Pixels at Dawn, Blast Turbo, a mechanically simplistic puzzle platform in the vein of Bubble Bobble, with decent graphics for an 8-bit. But damn if it wasn't frustratingly hard.
It was.
Would really have benefited from some in-game sound. Bowin and the Count Dracula, a colorful, challenging little platform that owes a lot to Manic Miner, even down to the punishing fall damage. Good fun for a short while and colorful too, but the music loop is too damn short.
Yes.
Matthew Perron, Bowin and Count Dracula, god-awful platformer.
Thank you.
With punishing fall mechanic and not much fun to redeem the game. The music loop is sure to make you go insane in no time. I give it 2 out of 10. And I did forget this. I'm glad he mentioned it. Because when you die, there's a gravestone that comes up that says, "Here lies a nobody." Yeah. And that's you.
That was the funniest part.
Perron, his review of Blast Turbo. Nice little PD game with impressive graphics and animation. With a level design that reminds me of Bubble Bobble. The game is short, a little buggy and lacking music. But the concept is cool, and there's a good variety of enemies, 5 out of 10. So thanks, fellas, for sending in some reviews.
I would agree with all of that.
Yeah, well,
except for that one guy that said it was fun.
Listen,
your game.
You're too hard. Let's wash this away.
Cleanse the palate.
Now, tell the folks what you've decided to do this week as I grab the wheel.
Oh well, last week Chat's Challenge or the Chat Choice won.
Chat Challenge is more appropriate in this case.
and I felt it would be wrong to take Chat Choice off the wheel, so it remains. There is no new puzzle piece for this week.
I'm not sure how I feel about this, but we're going to do it. So we'll spin the wheel. Give it a good hard spin, dude. And we're off.
Oh no.
And we have picked, what do we got here, Brandy, this week? Oh, finally, thank you, sweet Lord. It's the CDI. The CDI, the Philips Miracle Machine. What? No love for the CDI?
No.
Listen, they had Zelda and Mario games on the CDI. They had Laserdisc games. They had it all.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for this thing to come up for a while to complete our unholy trinity of failed CD.
Well, you know what? I can say in advance that I enjoyed the SAM COUPE better than next week.
Oh, please. You haven't even picked a game yet.
And yet I still hate it.
You don't know anything about the CDI.
Oh, yes, I do.
Don't worry, folks. I'm going to educate this sucker old school. So, please join us next week this is going to be great, glorious. I haven't been this excited since we did the TV game. To the max. The action max. This is right up that. I'm that kind of excited. So join us next week for maximum action as we take on the CDI. Any parting thoughts?
Well, no.
Fair enough. Enough said. So everyone, until next week,
have
power off.